Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to see you. In fact,
too.
it's great to see you again because this is how we see each other, meet each other through Zoom, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Well, as one of the OG podcasters, and you can see by the background there, I'm all about podcasting and have been since '04 when I got involved in it.
Nice. Well, you predate me by just a little bit because I think I got into it in '05.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was one of the original nerds of podcasting, and and you mentioned '05. I spent most of '05 traveling around the country, speaking to business groups and speaking to colleges and saying, hey, this new thing is here. It's going to change everything. You can be the media, and I got the blank stares because it was way too early.
Yeah.
But now
that's the problem, right? Everything, see, I have this saying, everything will happen. The only question is when.
Right.
So timing is like the most important thing. If you're too early or too late, then it's not going to work. But if you hit it at just the right moment, then things explode. And I think that's where we were in '05 with podcasting. It's like we could see the potential, but trying to convince other folks to see the potential, that was almost impossible.
Yeah. The saying is the pioneers get the arrows, right? But yeah, I think and part of it is, if you are too early, you can just be stubborn and hang around.
Mm-hmm.
I paid my bills.
If you can handle it. I couldn't handle it. That was my problem.
Nice. Yeah, there was a lot of pod fading going on in the early days.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think I got up to about 800 plus episodes.
Yeah.
And then the thing that really killed me was when my hosting provider just went belly up, right? And disappeared with all of my shows without me even having a backup. I'm the idiot here, but
well, that's the thing is early on in any industry, you're trusting a whole lot of other people who are early on in their industry.
Yeah,
so
exactly. But at one point they were actually paying me. So that's when I thought, okay, this is actually going to this could turn into something.
Yeah.
And then, well, if you remember the progression, it was kind of like podcasting sort of exploded.
Yeah.
And it got a lot of press real quick. So there was a huge sort of a podcasting bubble.
Right.
And then YouTube kind of steamrolled us. Right around that time, all of a sudden YouTube got popular and it's like, oh my God, now everyone's doing video. And it's like, it completely steamrolled podcasting and it just took second place. And then of course, podcasting had its second emergence after that at one point. But during that first steamroll, a lot of people lost faith in steamroll. I went for a long while after the steamroll. Then eventually, when I had that huge loss, that's when I said, okay, I'm gonna drop this now. And then I picked it up later. I mean, I started back in 2013, so I've been doing it for 11 years now.
900 now, right?
Yeah. So I'm almost back up to where I was before. But I smartly, at least I think it's smartly, I spread across. I did YouTube, I do video, I do audio, I do everything, right? So instead of just sticking to one specific medium, I try to go across mediums. In anything I'm doing, I'm like, okay, I got to go in all mediums now. It's like it's tiring, damn it.
It's easier now though with AI coming in. But you had mentioned YouTube steamrolling. Yeah, that was interesting because you're right. Everybody kind of jumped over there, but now what they've discovered over the subsequent 15 plus years has been that the conversion rate is much higher in audio only because the connection is so much stronger. So you see Google did away with Google Podcasts entirely, and now you put your RSS feed right into YouTube.
Yep.
So they're coming back and saying, oh, y'all had it right in the first place.
Exactly. Well, I've always thought that the audio only interface was much more intimate. You can do much more better communication. And then it also is more interactive because it involves the listener more than the video. Because if you're just watching a video, there's really the listener's not doing anything. Whereas if you're listening to an audio, the listener is imagining the whole
Yep.
scenario. Like if it, say, for example, if it's fiction or something like that, they can imagine the entire scenario in their head. So they're contributing to the overall experience themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing I tell people is that you as a host are literally inside their brain. So it's like you're having a conversation right next to them. When you're watching video, we're in video right now and we're going out in audio, but in the video version, I'm looking at the back of the wall, seeing the Stanford banner. I'm looking at your microphone. I'm very distracted.
I got to do something about cleaning this up. Is that what you're telling me?
Not at all. No. I'm just saying for people like me, ADHD, we get very, stimulated.
Yeah. But I think that the reality is that every type of media or every kind of content has strengths and weaknesses in
Yeah,
every kind of media, right?
true.
So people come on my show and I'm like, oh, can I do a chart or can I show a chart? Can I do a whiteboard? I'm like, no, because I have people who are also listening. I mean, you
Right.
can do the whiteboard, but you'll have to describe the
Describe it.
whiteboard
Yeah.
to people. And I think it's difficult for folks because there's the whole sort of auditory, visual, kinesthetic thing where
Yeah.
some people like watching things and some people like listening to things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the different mediums. I have a client who I help do a cooking podcast with, and it's audio.
Mm-hmm.
And cooking is perfect for video because you can see it.
Yeah.
You can in audio do a little bit of sound seeing if you're doing something like frying because you can hear it, but it doesn't work for baking.
No, we're just gonna put this in the oven. Clunk.
Right, exactly. But again, if as a host you're good at describing things, that's just as powerful because, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, now their brain is in there.
Yeah. So what happened so when you decided to go all in on podcasting in 04 or 05, like when did you decide this is it?
No, I had a marketing company prior to that, and so did the traditional marketing thing for, to pay the bills. Didn't go all in on podcasting until probably about 6 years ago
Hmm.
because it just wasn't there yet.
Yeah. The YouTube steamroller had left and podcasting
Right.
was starting to ramp back up again.
Exactly. And so
Hmm.
one of the shows I did, the very first show I started was called Lone Star Gridiron, which covers Texas high school football. And
Nice.
yes, a very good niche, right?
That's my
And
problem. I can never niche down small enough. That's a beautiful niche. I
yeah, I
love
was
that. How did you
worried that was
find
going to
that? Were
be
you
too
just interested
small.
in it, or were you just
Right.
interested in it, or how did
Oh
did
yeah,
somebody come to
exactly.
you?
That was my background. I played Texas high school football. I officiated. I was going to be a football coach and discovered I didn't really like that, world. I like business too much.
Hmm.
So stayed connected with it the entire time, stayed a fan. Even though I moved around various places, I would always find a good football game on Friday night to go to.
Right.
And you watch the Friday night lights movie or TV series, and that's exactly how it is. It's real,
Hmm.
just like that. And it's, that I in fact wrote a book with a 12-time championship winning coach called All I Need to Know I Learned from My Texas High School Football Coach.
Nice.
And so I'm very passionate about the lessons that the sport teaches, the pride, the poise, the class, the teamwork, all of that. So stayed connected with it and expanded that one show into a site and a series of shows. It's probably got 20, 30 shows during the week, during
Wow.
the football season. Yeah.
Nice. So you do 30 shows a week?
During the football season. Now, not all me. I have people
That
in
is
East Texas,
nuts.
West Texas, and coaches shows and you name it, all kinds of different content because the audience is huge
Mm,
and rabid. They're very
fantastic.
rabid fans.
Wow. So how did you when did you realize this was going to be a success? Like this is what I ask all of these startup founders and people who have
Yeah.
small businesses. It's like you were motoring along and then all of a sudden there was a point where you probably said to yourself, yeah, this is going to work. This is going to be huge.
I don't know that there's a point that what I yeah.
Well, did you ever look back and go, oh, wait a minute, this is actually working?
No, actually, I'm always looking forward, and that's why I like you so much, being a futurist. But, when I first saw podcasting, it popped into my head, wow, this could be big. So I just started that way. When I
Right,
started the football site, I was like, wow, this could be big. So I just started that way and eventually find ways to monetize. We
right.
started selling ads in it. We started selling some membership things on the site. And pretty soon it's starting to pay some bills. And
Mm,
there's with me, there's never a moment of reflection where like, oh yes, it's working. It's always, oh, what's next? That
right.
so now I'm dealing with AI because it's what's next.
So you say, how many shows do you have? So tell me about your roster. Is it
In
huge?
our entire network, we've got about 60 shows. We'd started, like I said, with the high school football. We expanded into some other sports, college football. We do one for the University of Texas. We went into volleyball. We do a national volleyball show, the XFL, a bunch of sports shows. But then we also expanded into helping businesses, thought leaders, develop their shows,
Mm.
municipalities and nonprofits, because we found it's a great fundraising tool for nonprofits that they can, tell their story and get people to sponsor.
Oh,
So it's the same
fantastic. And
business
I guess,
model.
again, these are all just audio only
Yes.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so that's what we do. We offer now full service from ideation to weekly editing, you name it.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And what kind of, I mean, when you're going to these small organizations, I guess they don't have a lot of money, right?
Right.
So I'm assuming you're able to price it properly and still make a profit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of always the mystery of, what they can afford versus how fast can they monetize?
Right, right.
Because most shows can be monetized, unless it's just you talking about, heck, even that could be monetized. Never mind. I mean, you can pretty much monetize any of them if you work at it.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So how do you monetize stuff like that? I mean, would you go to local advertisers and say, hey, like, can you tell me the story of how you would say monetize, like one example of these smaller non-sports related? Because I
Right,
can totally see how you monetize the sports stuff. Like,
right.
how do you monetize the non-sports stuff?
Yeah, like we do one for a couple different cities in Texas. This
Hmm.
week in Victoria, this week in Wimberly, and some other ones. So Wimberly, Texas is a small little hill country town
Oh,
that
I know Wimberly.
perfect. It's
Nice
wonderful.
place.
If you know it, you love it, right?
Yep.
And so it's the same model. We then sell ads to businesses in Wimberley.
Mm,
And that's
perfect.
what
It's
we
almost like
do.
having a local radio station, basically, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's hyper local, hyper focused, and it's one-on-one. It's not,
Mm.
clear channel and the stuff that nobody listens to anymore.
So the Wimberley station, how often does it like? See, I'm already thinking about it as a radio station.
Yeah,
How the Wimberley podcast? How often does it come out? Who's featured on it? How like? Can you give me some
yeah,
topics?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Pretty simple. It's every week it comes out. It drops on Thursday evenings, I think.
mhm.
Um, and it's basically the co-hosts talk about what's going on this week in Wimberley, from what bands are playing where to, what fundraisers are going on in town, what school events, just kind of a, hey, here's what's going on. They, on it, we also feature a local artist who
Mhm.
gives us permission to play their tracks.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
And then we highlight a local nonprofit as well. So that's the
Wow.
whole
So it's
show.
kind of like a local newspaper and a local cable access station
Yeah.
and a local. It's like all this sort of an amalgam, an aggregation of local content that's specific, and I'm assuming it's timely, right? Based on the
Yes.
week.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this stuff's completely timely, whereas we have a bunch of other shows that are evergreen, and
Right.
and we love those because, I've got episodes of these other shows that are 10 years old that still get downloaded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you've got the sports, you've got the local sort of like news and events and things like that. And then you said you have business leaders as well, like thought leadership.
Yeah, anytime, you have a gazillion coaches out there that are
Oh yeah.
different financial
The coach
coaches.
explosion. Every time that there's a recession, there's like a coach explosion.
Exactly. And they all have to get their word out. And
Yeah.
they all have courses, they all have books, they all have ways to monetize, so it's the Gary Vaynerchuk, plan of
Right.
give, and then, oh, by
The
the way,
junior Gary Vaynerchuk plan.
right. Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, that works for them. And then we have municipalities. We're working with several cities and economic development groups doing the exact same thing, highlighting why businesses should move to Pflugerville, Texas.
Right.
What's good about it, and interviewing the mayor, interviewing the head of Tesla there, not Elon, but the Pflugerville office. But yeah.
And is that an also a weekly podcast? So the Pflugerville News or something like that?
That one is not. That one is more when they decide they want to do it. And
right.
I always tell people the sweet spot, if you want to build an audience, is weekly. Do it weekly, do it 20, 35 minutes tops. And that will build a strong audience. Or if you can pull it off daily.
Well, I mean, you'd have to have enough news
to
do something daily. That's the key piece, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like those weekly newspapers that you get, like Metro News or whatever, which cover the local news, local bands, local events, local this, local that. So that's a lot of what those local ones are doing, and the other ones are focused. And on the coaches, do they have a regularly scheduled one, or are they one-offs, or how does that? How do those
generally
work?
I caution people against one-offs, just because that's a simple infomercial. You can't convert a lot with that. You can use it on a landing page to sell something,
right?
But then it better be short. You can't have an hour-long one, or you lose the audience. My question to you is, how do you come up with all this content for what you're doing with Think Future?
It just springs from my brain. I don't know why.
So you sit and do that all day long?
No, what usually happens, so I have another podcast called AIDaily.us, right? Which is just AI news. Yeah. And that is read by AI. And I go through and I curate a bunch of stories. And out of that curation, I just spend about an hour a day curating like a crap load of what just happened in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
And out of that spurs additional ideas, which that's where I get a lot of the content from for the shows that I'm doing. And then other than that, it's just sort of random stuff that I've been thinking about. Where I see juxtapositions, right? Like the whole thing that I'm fascinated.
I don't know if you remember the podcast Pickle that Gary Leland had.
Yeah. Whatever happened to them?
Well, he's gone on to a whole bunch of other things. He's still another fellow Texan. He's doing great things, but yeah, I was just back in that time, I was known as the hardest working man in podcasting because I had 5 shows at the same time, which was crazy. But now I look at what you're doing, I'm thinking, yeah, you may have that title.
I try. It's tough to do a daily show, but after a while, it just becomes it's actually not that difficult. It becomes second nature. So it feels bad when I'm not doing it. I'm like sitting here on my vacation. I'm like, why am I not doing my show? What's going on? My listeners want to hear me. But I'd be really curious about your pricing model. I mean, do you just charge them like a subscription fee? Do you just say, does it depend on who it is? So if you're going to a local community, like a little town like Wimberly, do you go, hey, for you it's X amount, and for the coach it's different, or how does your?
I have a basic launch package, that I sell for $999, and that is everything. It starts with your album art, the show name, the ideation of what your content's going to be, the plan, maybe some scripts for reaching out to guests, just all the pieces, setting it up on your website, connecting your RSS feeds, getting you ready to where all you have to do is record your audio.
Right.
That's the launch. And Of course, I've discounted that, for various reasons.
Sure.
Somebody has no money, I'll discount.
Yeah. But this guy's story really needs to be told.
Right, right. And then there's an episodic charge. I will show them 100% start to finish everything they need to know. Boom, we shake hands, they go off and have a great life and a great show. But what
so you actually train them on how to do podcasts as well at the same time? Wow,
yeah.
that's great. And, so some people just take it and run.
Yeah, exactly. But most people say, I like it, but it's a lot of work. So then,
well, that's the thing that I noticed that's the same. That seems to be similar across a lot of things. It's like what consultants are like, here are the 100 things that you need to do in order to get this done. And I will tell you exactly what you need to do. And then as soon as you tell them, they're like, you do it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I used to talk with people and they're like, why would you give away all the details? I'm like, because it's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody, the details are fine, but talking about it is one thing.
Right.
So what about marketing the podcast? Like because from my perspective, that's the hardest thing. So, I mean, you and I, we're experienced podcasters, so we kind of know all of the ins and outs and the technical stuff. And that part, like once you have it down, then you're good. But then once you get that new podcast up and running, how do you promote it? How do you get people to listen to it? I mean, what's success in their minds?
Well, that's the other thing is you kind of set the bar for them,
right?
Set the expectation so they know, okay, you're not going to get 10 million downloads this first week. It's not going to happen. But you might get 10.
Yeah, 10 would be good, right? 10.
Right. And if you want to get to 100, here's some things you should do. If you want to get to 1,000, and it's the standard things you do across the board to build a tribe for anything. It's all the social media, it's the emails, it's the interaction, it's answering comments, it's what it is. It's a lot of work too.
Yeah, it's almost more, I'm thinking it's almost more work to build an audience than it is to actually just get the content out. Because hey, I get my shows out in an hour every Sunday. I record these programs. The 4 other shows that I do just on my own, I record them in less than an hour on Sunday, and then it takes me about 2 hours to edit everything and make it work. But that's the easy part.
Yep.
Actually getting people to come listen to it and watch it. That's the tough part.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, we'll help with that. On that episodic charge I was talking about, it can be next to nothing. It can be pretty expensive if they need all the things done and they need it promoted and they need, find guest spots on other shows and maybe even need a co-host, we'll provide those too.
Oh, so you provide, do you actually help them get guests as well? Or is that like an additional fee or?
Yeah. Everything comes down to time. If it takes more time, it costs more money.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So where do you see, so it's time to think like futurist. It's the year 2034 now. I can't believe it's like 2034. It's 10 years from now. What do you think is happening with podcasting? I mean, we're seeing so many of them, like pod fading. You were mentioning it before. Like if you go to Spotify and you look at the breadth, there's millions of podcasts there. But how many of them actually had an episode in the last year, in the last 2 years, in the last 5 years? It's insane. Where do you think things are going?
Well, I think that's going to continue. You're going to see millions of offerings out there. You're going to see the majority not making it past episode 10. That's just what we talked about already. It's hard work. Yeah. So now, it's
the hard work without the reward. That's the problem.
Initially, yes. Yeah. Well, it's like anything. It's like being a YouTube star. You've got to put in 2 to 5 years before you make $1 off of YouTube.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you do, then you've got a chance to do the hockey stick and turn it into something.
Yeah. But everybody in this world wants instant gratification. If I can't get my podcast up there,
that's right. And that's why people, are going to keep trying and keep, then changing their minds and trying something else.
Yeah.
But as far as where I think podcasting is going to be, I think podcasting survived and thrived because it's personal. It's very, every episode, over 10,000 episodes, I've ended with keep it real. And that's because that works. That builds audiences. I think as AI gets involved, there's going to be an opportunity to make it look real. I use 11 Labs, which is,
yeah, me too.
I love it.
Yeah.
I trained it on.
They're the best. I was using some other service called Flicky or something like that,
Yes,
and it was not that good.
Right.
And a friend of mine suggested 11 Labs, and I thought, wow, this is so much better.
Yes, it blew me away. You train it on your voice with a couple hours worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And it gets your inflections right. It gets everything. And it surprised the heck out of me.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So I think
it's super good.
I think people will be trying to automate reality or keeping it real. I shouldn't say reality. It's all.
Yeah. What is real, right?
Right. Yeah. And that question is harder to answer every single day. But
I know,
yeah, you'll see
AI is getting so sophisticated now. It's so difficult to tell what's real, especially in imagery and videos. Some of them are insane.
Yeah, some of
you were saying
video I've seen are like blows you away.
Yeah, exactly. So where do you see podcasts? So do you see podcasting maintaining that and growing, or where do you see it going?
I see it growing, but I also see big money coming into it. Like they tried at the beginning, the big money came in. I remember Johnson & Johnson was one of the first advertisers. Then a while later, NPR came in and did what was the show?
All Things Considered.
No, the Serial.
Right.
Yeah, the show Serial, that, and grabbed a big market share because it was very highly produced. But I still think, I hate to relate it to reality TV because that's so unreal. But reality TV took off because it felt real, and the writers were on strike when it happened. Right.
Yeah. Well, I see. This is the thing I think is going to happen with podcasts, because this is the cycle of social media, or any kind of media for that matter. It's like when it first starts, you get an influx of regular Joes like us creating content. We're not professional, entertainers or whatever. So, but then we create content for people like us, right? So we create content. So there's a huge wave of those kind of podcasters, and then sort of the head takes notice and goes, okay, Disney comes in and NPR comes in, and they throw a crap load of money, and suddenly they've taken over the App Store, and that's all you see at the top, right? And the rest of us are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We don't have that kind of cash to be able to promote ourselves. But then you see things swinging back to, wait a minute, I want to hear the real voices. I don't want to hear the overly productized, because it's just like what I would listen to on the radio or whatever.
Right.
So I wish there was a better mechanism for people to be exposed to these voices. So some way to say, oh, well, if you like this NPR show, then here's 5 other podcasters who are just little guys that do interesting stuff as well. And I think the problem is that all of these tech companies make too much money off the head content for the tail content, for them to promote the tail content, right? So I wish there was some way to surface more of the tail content, because I think that's the most powerful stuff that you get from non-professional programmers.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that actually drives the engine of everything. Like you said, the head comes in and follows. But so it is the tail wagging the dog, right?
Yeah. But then everybody gets enamored with the head stuff. And then like all of a sudden, no one listens to you anymore because they prefer to listen to the Disney podcast. It's like, no, there's so much more content out there. And I just wish there was some way that these tools, because we're all beholden to these machines, right? The machines are like, oh, if you listen to this, you might like this, because everyone goes by that nowadays. So it's difficult to be seen. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see sort of a resurgence of people going back to the more reality-based stuff, because this is how we operate. We swing one way really far, and then we realize, wait, we went too far. Now we got to come back.
Yeah, but I think at its core, us, the little guy, will always remain, you know.
Right.
And you're right, there will be moments in the evolution where we'll have a really tough go of it. You know, we'll have a hard time, you know, making money from it.
Right.
But and so maybe what this conversation tells me is there's a business opportunity there to come up with that engine to show people, hey, here's the real stuff.
Yeah, I'll start working on that next week.
Right. Yeah, we'll partner on that, and we'll be gazillionaires. Right?
You know, I had a
years.
So I do this thing sometimes where I go into restaurants and I ask, so you know how when you go to a restaurant that you've never been to before, you ask the server, what's the most popular thing? Like, what do people eat? Right. Well, for a while there, I tried doing what is the least popular thing? What does nobody order? And first of all, they're all like shocked. Like, who would want to know that?
I like it.
Or they say everything's good. But in some cases, I got them to say, well, you know, hardly anybody orders this, you know, steak salad or whatever.
Right.
And I tried it, and it's really good. Right. So it's not necessarily the most popular thing that's really good. And that's not just in food, it's in everything. So all these little podcasts with smaller audiences are amazing.
Yeah.
We just have to surface those up.
So we create this service, we call it steak salad, and we're rich.
Such a 2024 name.
Right. I love that.
Awesome.
It's funny because my wife does that too. She'll ask the server, and of course, you know, being a marketer, I'm thinking, they're just saying what they need to sell, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what always throws them off when you say, what's the least popular? Like, huh? Nobody's ever asked me that. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. So we definitely have to do this more often, because I love talking with you. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, my name, you know, is hard to spell, but I'm easy to find on the web because it's so unique. It's Chris Daly, spelled Doelle.
So that's how you pronounce it? Daly?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. Thank you for helping me with that.
Yeah, everybody calls me Doelle, Dooley, Dolly.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's one of those Texan things, right? Because it's like Buda and
right. I'm impressed. You know Buda. But no,
we were looking at a property in Austin, and our real estate agent said, do not pronounce these things like that. This is how you pronounce them. And she went through like 4 or 5 different places, like, do not pronounce it Buddha, it's Buda. And I thought, okay, I'll remember that.
I love that. Yeah. No, it's German, actually. There's a lot of Germans in Texas.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
awesome.
you can find me at freshmediaworks.com, or like I said, search for my name. I'm on every social, everything you can think of. I'm out there.
Fantastic. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you too.